Hello and welcome to the Unique CPA with your host, Randy Crabtree. Today, we continue our series of episodes on the power of community in the accounting profession. We'll explore how strong connections lead to healthier, more fulfilled professionals, and together create a supportive network that enriches everyone. The Unique CPA is brought to you by Trimerit, the specialty tax professionals.
Today on the Unique CPA, we're joined by Nancy McClelland, better known as the Dancing Accountant. Nancy is an award-winning CPA educator and founder of Ask a CPA, which I'm excited to talk about today. Ask a CPA is a community dedicated to bridging the gap. Sound familiar? Bridging the gap between bookkeepers and tax professionals. Nancy's career is built on relationships, whether with small business clients, accounting professionals, or the broader community. I'll vouch to that. But she didn't start out as a CPA. We'll talk about that as well. Her journey from bookkeeping to owning her own firm is a story of evolution, learning, and embracing her unique approach to accounting. Nancy, welcome to the Unique CPA.
Thank you, Randy. And what a beautiful introduction. I feel like that might be the nicest introduction anyone's ever given me.
Believe me, I had to cut stuff out because I was going to talk about how much, to steal Kristen Keats, how much joy you bring to accounting, how much fun you have with it, how, anytime I see you across the room at a conference, my face lights up because it's just the energy you bring. So yeah, now I added those things as well.
Yeah, no kidding. You edited them out and then you just put them back in. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to finally be on the show.
Wait, finally? Was that a dig at me?
It was.
What took so long,
why
Randy?
didn't this happen sooner?
Well, honestly, we've only known each other about a year. Well, it's less than 2 years.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Because I guess we met in person at the first Bridging the Gap.
Yeah, which was August of 23, and we were recording in March of 25. So it's not much more than a year and a half, but it feels like I've known you for a long time,
It feels like I've known you for a long time, partially because Beer Temple, which you're one of the owners of, is one of our favorite bars in Chicago. It's walking distance from our place. So in a way, I feel like a deeper connection with you because we have that beautiful thing in common. Beer.
Yes, we do, but we haven't gone there together, which we tried. No. You tried, and I was not able to do it. So we will make it happen this year for sure.
We'll make it happen.
During our birthday month. Maybe we'll get there in May. So.
We both have our May birthdays. I'm really looking forward to that. I'll be back from Mexico. You'll be back from California. It'll be great.
Yep. All right. Let's jump into this because there's a lot to talk about today, starting with what I talked about in the intro a little bit, your journey, starting as a bookkeeper to become a CPA. You want to give us that a little bit of background on that journey?
Absolutely. I'd be happy. I have run my own bookkeeping, tax, accounting, and advisory firm. You mentioned it's called the Dancing Accountant for almost 24 years now, which is kind of mind-blowing to me. I started as a bookkeeper and I worked internally at a few different places, nonprofits and creative. My undergraduate degree is actually in music education. I don't know if you knew that. So
I think you told me, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. So my first job as a bookkeeper was at the Ann Arbor School for the Performing Arts. And I was teaching music theory part-time and I was the office manager part-time. And wow, did I realize how much they needed a person like me in the office doing the books because creative folks are amazing. But, this was just not their strength. And that was where I started to realize that as much as I loved the creative side of things, I was studying music education, so I wanted to be a teacher. And bookkeeping was something where I felt like I was teaching people, like when you work with a client, you have to explain things to them. And the more patient you can be and the more perspectives you can look at it from, that's all stuff that my undergraduate degree in music education helped me with. So from there, once I moved to Chicago, I was working in Hyde Park as an accounting supervisor. And when I left that, thought, well, I'll just temp for a while. And that first temp job turned into my first client. And they did outsourced CFO work was what they needed. And I had experience with their accounting system, which was Great Plains Dynamics. And from there, it really snowballed. It absolutely snowballed. And now, 24 years later, I branched out into tax. I got my master's once I decided I wanted to tackle advisory work. And only then did I become a CPA.
Was that why only then? Was 150 part of?
Not at
Were
all.
you
No,
under the
as a
150
matter of
rules?
fact,
I wasn't. Yeah.
no. Well, I think the 150 rule was in place when I became a CPA, but I actually am not 100% sure because it wasn't an issue for me.
Right.
I mean, this was my master's degree. I was getting a master's degree in accounting and financial management because my undergraduate degree had been in music education. And I wanted to get a degree not because my clients cared. I wanted to become a CPA not because my clients cared. The type of work didn't really change, but kind of my ability to look at the numbers and figure out how they were telling a story. That was something I really wanted to figure out for my clients. And so I was getting my master's just because I'm interested in this stuff. I love tax. I love accounting. I love bookkeeping. I love helping small businesses. And I think this is the biggest impact that we can make is by being an accountant, being in a profession that helps them do what they do to increase the vitality of communities that they live in. And we have a very niche practice in terms of our geography. We have really a micro niche, I guess you would call it. We're hyper local. It's just our neighborhood of Logan Square in Chicago. And every once in a while, I will accept a client from outside of our neighborhood. But even that, we have our ideal client profile and we really like to stick with it. So these are the places where we eat and drink. And these are the stores where we shop. These are the people we call for professional services, right? These are very much the people in our community, and we're really proud of serving them.
Huh. So the only thing I'm disappointed there is niche, not niche. But that's.
Do you and Kelly Parks have a disagreement on that one? It sounds like
we do.
Is that the only thing that you guys disagree on? Is that like is that preventing you from really becoming besties?
I think she drinks Coors Light. That might be the only other thing. So,
bless your heart, Kelly. I don't think I can agree with you on that one either. But
yes, but that's other than that. I'm feeling after 220 episodes or wherever we're at now of the podcast that I'm in the minority with niche.
With niche and
I'm
niche?
finding out.
I don't know. I think I go back and forth depending on the sentence. It might be equal opportunity on that one. I haven't decided yet.
All right. Well, that's cool. Another thing that came out of that discussion is 24 years in business. I've never done anything for 24 years. So, well, other than me married to Kathy, my wife, we're at 38 years now. So,
wow, congratulations. That's beautiful.
Yeah. But yeah, 24 years. I was just then. The only reason I thought that is because yesterday morning, I was thinking, I think Trimerit's now the longest business that I've stayed involved with.
And how long is that?
We're 18 years. 18. We're just short of 18 years right now. My accounting firm was 15 years. But if I count the part-time that I was doing on the side before I went full blast, that would have been 18 years probably. So I think we probably just passed it now. I don't know why this is about me now. Let's get back to you.
It's wonderful. I'm so excited to hear that because it makes me feel like 24 is, I mean, that is an accomplishment. We had the most wonderful party since I mentioned that we have this hyperlocal firm, right?
Yep.
For our 21st anniversary. It was supposed to be 20th, but pandemic. So we did a 21st anniversary and we billed it as finally our firm is old enough to drink. And it was wonderful. We threw a huge party in the community that was open to the community. The Logan Square Chamber of Commerce is one of our clients, and they co-hosted it with us. And we had it at the park, Solidarity Park, which is right outside the doors of the Chamber of Commerce. A client of mine that's a band, Wild Earp and the Free For Alls, they performed and clients donated different things for our little goodie bags, and it was a huge, beautiful blowout. Revolution donated the beer. I mean, it was like just such an amazing community experience. And so that was a very special moment in my life where I was like, wow, we have been making a difference for a long time. I mean, Logan Square, it gets voted coolest neighborhood, not only in Chicago, but in the country on a regular basis. And like, we're part of we're part of making that happen, like helping keep these clients healthy.
Yeah, well, they have a dancing accountant, so obviously that makes it cool.
That
So,
was actually a client that gave me that name, Randy. I
yeah,
didn't come up with that.
we're going to have to get into that in a second. But before we do, a couple things. You just keep making me think about different things. But Revolution Brewery, which is a Chicago-based brewery, a friend of mine is their CFO, but he's CFO slash, and I think his title is CMO as well, head of marketing. So he's like
neat.
got this
Marketing and finance.
Yes, exactly. He's kind of like you, very creative, but then also I've got the the numerical numbers side of things, and he's I don't know, I haven't looked in a while, but I think he's got a lot of followers on Instagram where he does these really cool like just videos and stuff about beer and whatnot. But he was on the podcast was the whole point. A couple of years ago, Doug Valecki was on the podcast. So
That's so cool. Well, so what happened there is that Josh Deeth who is the head of Revolution Brewing, he actually was the first director of the Logan Square Chamber of Commerce when it branched off and became its own Chamber of Commerce. And his wife is a bookkeeper. And so he, as he would say, knew enough to be dangerous, and he would keep the books for the Logan Square Chamber of Commerce. And then when he left and was passing the torch to the next executive director, Josh reached out to me and said, hey, this person who's coming in doesn't have as much experience with bookkeeping. Would you be willing to help us out? And that is how we started working together.
Wow, that's pretty cool. All right, so we'll get away from hyperlocal now. You and I can
don't
talk
want to
about
niche
Chicago.
Anymore, niche or niche.
No, that's fine. I love it because it's really, to me, let's not go away from that because I love that a lot because I like niche practices. But one of the niches that, and I know we've talked about this before, but I never really thought about that deep, having a niche of just a community.
Yeah.
Which is what it is. And that's actually pretty cool. Did you start out that way or did it just like, I just don't want to leave home? I mean, how did that?
Well, it was very organic. As you may have noticed, I am pretty outgoing and gregarious.
Yes.
You and I have a few things in common. We're both talkers and we're both really passionate about what we do. And so I would just be out there in the community during a period of time, when Logan Square was experiencing very organic growth. And I would get really excited every time a new restaurant would open. I would get really excited when a new shop would open. And I would go in because I'm a resident of that community and I'm invested in that community. So I would stop in and I would check them out. I believe very strongly in shopping small and buying local. That is definitely one of the key things in our mission. Also, one of the reasons that we have chosen not to offshore is that we really personally believe that's just one of our values. And so I would go in places and we would start chatting. And I would say, oh, when did you start your business? And I would say I'm the worst person in the world at sales and marketing intentionally. I am pretty awesome at it unintentionally because I just talk and I listen and I'm curious, And so we would be chatting and I would ask about their struggles and challenges and almost invariably it would come up that, they didn't know what they were doing with their books or their taxes. And I'd be like, oh, that's kind of a cool coincidence. Here's my card. And the next thing you know, we had accidentally built a hyperlocal practice. But one of the things that's really interesting about that is that our firm is fully remote. We've never had a brick and mortar location because all of my team members, initially they were in Chicago, but as, they wanted to move to different places, Atlanta, New York, and it seemed like a shame to lose them. And there was this cool thing called Zoom. And so I was like, I guess we don't really need to lose you. So we became a remote firm because we wanted to hang on to our people. And I was the only one who met with clients anyway. And I was meeting with them at like Cafe Mustache is one of my favorite cafes and bars as somebody who likes to go out in the neighborhood. And so it kind of became my office, either there or Reno. I'd meet people there or I'd meet them at their businesses. And so it was extremely organic. At this point, it's very intentional. We rarely take on new clients. And when we do, they have to meet everything that we have set out in our ideal client profile. And one of those things is that they need to be geographically located in or around our neighborhood. And also, they have to be mission-based themselves. So we work with a lot of mental health professionals. We work with, all sorts of organizations that are doing great things for nonprofits, et cetera.
That's I really like that story. I could listen to that. We can go another hour just hearing about this whole
We better not,
the way
but
you set
I'd be
up.
happy
We won't, because I want to go to something else. But before we do that, I just have to tell you a story on when you were talking there and telling us this whole, how you got new business, and it was curiosity, really. It was passion for what was going on in the community, these new businesses coming in, and curiosity.
That's something that you talk about a lot at Bridging the Gap, curiosity. That is,
Yep.
Curiosity, I also think, is one of the pillars of mental health
Yep.
and a sustainable practice.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I got to, you know what? I need to build curiosity more into what I say, because I think that's important. But so Kathy and I, you mentioned we were in California. We just spent 27 hours driving back, or 30 hours from California. We just got back. And one of the books we listened to on the drive was called A Funny Story. I don't know if you ever heard of the book.
No, I haven't.
Great book.
Oh, I can't wait.
But in there, the main character, and I always forget characters' names, but I'm pretty sure his name was Miles, or one of the two main characters. Miles, now I'm going to give a book review. Basically,
we really could talk for hours.
Yes.
It would be the best way I could think of to spend the day.
But so Miles just is one of these personalities that's like you. People, like one of the characters would say to him, I just don't understand why everybody loves you. Because you're curious, you ask questions, you want to know, you want to hear what's happening, and just having that curiosity was cool. And so I can just picture you building your business, being in this new cafe that's like, this is amazing. How did you start this? What's going on? What's your goals? And that just paying off. So I love that as a business development technique, even though that's not what it is.
Right. I mean, I think that's one of the things that made it so special, is that it truly was inadvertent. But
yes.
Now, knowing 24 years later, knowing what I know,
yep.
It is a piece of advice I give to everybody everywhere. Yep. I think you and I are both huge fans of John Garrett, and I'm always bragging about the fact that I was the first guest on his podcast, What's Your And that's something that he talks about in terms of the people that you work with. Be curious about them, ask them questions. But I would argue that you can take that so much further. It's not just the people that you work with. It's, have curiosity about your own client base, have curiosity about human beings in general. I really believe everybody's like, oh, AI is going to take our jobs away. And I'm like, bring it on. I want AI to take care of all the drudgery. I want them to leave the personal relationships to me. That's something that I excel at, because I actually care. What was it you were saying? The other day I was saying, oh, how amazing you are. Thank you for being so supportive. And you said, well,
all you have to do is be nice.
And fun. And fun.
Well, we added the fun later because you asked, I had to apologize for not getting, stuff done for our conference. So I was really apologizing to myself, but apologizing to you that I hadn't sent some information because you're helping us with the conference. And my excuse was, I was just having too much fun because family was visiting us in California. But you came up with this name, or you and I have to start our own podcast, and we'll call it the Nice and Fun Podcast. So.
The Nice and Fun Podcast. Absolutely. If I could give anybody one piece of advice about building a client base, just be nice and fun.
And have fun. Be nice and have fun. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we can be nice and have fun all day. We'll stick to the nice. We'll stick to the fun. But let's get to the regularly scheduled program, which was really talking about, and I'm not even going to get there yet, the Ask a CPA community, because before we do that, we have to talk about the Dancing Accountant and where this came from. Was your business called the Dancing Accountant from day one, or did this evolve into that?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No, I had the world's most creative name you could possibly imagine for my company. It was called Nancy McClelland, LLC.
Yep. Well, you may have been the most unique one and the only one that existed. So.
Yeah, that is possible. Yeah, so it was called Nancy McClelland, LLC, and I wanted to rename it because I was just like, this doesn't reflect who I am. It's my name, but what does it say, right? and who's it going to attract? Because another piece of advice that I give to people when they are building their accounting and bookkeeping firm is that you should be auditioning these clients these potential clients as much as they're auditioning you, right? Like
Yep.
you want to make sure that it is a good fit from both sides. And I don't want to work with people who are boring or who think that I'm unprofessional because I, wear colorful clothing and because I speak my mind, I mean, I want to work with people who are engaging and interesting and vibrant and nice and fun, as you were saying. So I really wanted to change my name so that I would attract that kind of clientele. And so I just kept thinking about, well, we're a geographically hyperlocal firm, so maybe I'll call it Blue Line Accounting because we
I
live
know
at
what
the
that
Logan
means.
Square. You know what that means, Chicago Blue Line. I'm on the Logan Square stop. And I was like, well, I don't really take the Blue Line that often to clients because I can just walk there or ride my bike there. So that doesn't work. And I came up with a bunch of other ideas and nothing was really sticking. And one day I'm a dancer. I am a 1960s style go-go dancer. So think tall white boots, Nancy Sinatra. These boots are made for walking. So one day I was going to it was sort of a performance. It was this neat thing that we do at a pro bono client of mine is Unity Park, which is in our neighborhood, not surprisingly.
Yeah.
And they have a great program for the year. Like their advisory council is just really active in creating a dynamic, engaging, whole series of entertainment and stuff for the families in the neighborhood. And they had a thing where it was a go-go troupe that was teaching little kids how to go-go dance, and which is my very favorite part. I also dance in Fabulous Ladies of Fitness, which is a fake 80s jazzercise troupe where we have the audience dance along with us. I also dance in a glam marching band, and my favorite thing to do there is when we go to like Kids Day at the local farmers market, and we're dancing with the kids. It's so much fun. I was wearing, my tall white boots and my mini skirt, and I was all made up and everything. And I get there, and there was a client who was picnicking with her kids and attending the event. And I just like had to take a deep breath because it was the first time. Since then, it's happened zillions of times, but it was the
Right.
first time that I was like in costume doing this thing that a lot of people would think was kind of silly,
Yeah.
right? And it's just like, is she going to be able to take me seriously when I do this kind of thing? But I'm also, basically her outsourced CFO and her tax accountant, right? And I walked up and I said hi, and she goes, "Look, kids, it's the dancing accountants."
Awesome.
And it stuck.
Yeah.
And every year they'll come up on Facebook. There'll be like pictures of that event, and she'll send it to me, and she'll say, "Hey, the day I gave you your company
Ah.
name,
Oh,
wasn't it?"
that's cool.
She's
That's
still a
cool.
client all these years later. She's still a client.
Well, and you said, they think it's silly. Silly's fun. And that
Silly's
goes
fun.
back to, yeah,
It
exactly.
is. Well, and to go back to the point I was making about the ideal client profile and attracting
Yes.
the right kind of client, somebody who's going to be a good fit, somebody who thinks that the name the dancing accountant is stupid, they're not going to come to me, right? I'm
Yeah.
screening before they
You're
even
pre-screening
get
new
to me.
clients. Nice.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. One time I was at a client, it was a wine shop, which of course I'm a certified sake professional and I love sake and I love wine also. I love beer, I love cocktails, I'm a drinker. But I would say sake and wine are my favorites. And so I've had lots of wine clients throughout the years. And I was at his shop and one of his reps came in and we were doing a tasting together. And I said, "Oh, look at the time. I'm going to miss my bus if I don't run out." Now, this is Chicago, right? Public transit is a very important
Yep.
piece of the fabric of our daily lives. So I saw on the bus tracker that it was coming and I ran out the door. I found out from that client later that the rep went, "Oh, your CPA rides the bus," in a really derogatory way.
Wow.
And he was like, "Yeah." And I'm really proud to work with her because maybe we should be taking lessons from her on this because financially it makes sense.
Yeah.
But also, this shows that she like trusts this neighborhood that she lives in, and she feels safe and she feels engaged. Like, that's exactly who I want to be working with.
So we're going to have to talk about this wine shop after the show. I may know who you're talking about. We'll have to see if I do or not. And then the sake, there's this beer shop in Sedona, Arizona. Jesse Lee's. Became friend with this guy that owns it because Kathy and I, part of our winter trip is Sedona. And we stop.
I love Sedona.
And like you, I get in there, I talk to the guy, curious about what he's doing, exciting. But they're making some interesting sake in Arizona.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so he gave us one. Well, we bought it. He gives us a nice discount. But
one of the reasons I love working with wine shops.
Yep. But it was this interesting one. And it was like herb and something else. And, Kathy and I were talking to him. He goes, so would you use this for? What, you just drink it by itself? He goes, oh, what I do is I mix it 2-to-1 with bourbon, and it makes a really cool old fashioned.
With sake. I have never tried that in all of these years. Now, I'm the sake and the wine person in the family, and Mark is the beer and cocktail person in this family. So now I am going to have to tell him, hey, it looks like we've got a crossover here with the sake and the cocktail.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I drink it chilled. Premium sake, you should generally drink chilled and just on its own. I certainly don't use it as a mixer, but it certainly can be used as a mixer. And I don't know if you knew this, but sake is actually brewed like beer. It's not vinified like wine, and it's not a distillate. It's actually a brewed concoction, and the process is very similar to the brewing process for beer.
Yep. It technically probably is beer because it's using grains as a base, right?
Yeah, it uses rice as a base.
Right.
But the thing is that it does not malt from within the grain. You actually have to add what's called koji in order to break the starches down into simple sugars, whereas with beer, the grain actually, once it sits there and it's warm and moist enough, it will sprout its own enzymes to break down the starches into sugars. I'm guessing that Justin will cut that part out, but
never.
It's important. It's important.
No, this is our new podcast, the Unique Sake Show.
The unique drinker, the drinking CPAs.
All right. So now let's get to where we wanted to talk about, because I saw this, I don't know how early on, but I saw this right when you were at least, I think, announcing this new community, Ask a CPA, which I remember you doing a really cool presentation on it at the Tax Twitter retreat last year. So let's get into that. I mean, we talked about you starting as a bookkeeper and becoming a CPA. So what was really the inspiration to create this community, Ask a CPA?
Well, you started out by talking about how I really want to bridge the gap. I mean, the fact that your conference, my favorite conference, is called Bridging the Gap is really like not a surprise at all. And by the way, I have to brag on myself for a moment because last year I did win Mentor of the Year, that award at Bridging the Gap, which was an amazing experience for me because it turned out, I found out afterward, that the big group in the corner of the room that cheered the loudest when I got that award, those are all people who ended up joining Ask a CPA.
Wow.
And they were the ones who nominated me. It turns out that Melissa Miller-Ferguson reached out to Dawn Slokin, who reached out to Hope Brown, who reached out to the next person and the next person and the next person, and they all got together and nominated me. I didn't know about that until after the fact. So that was really, it turns out in retrospect, an even bigger moment in my life than I knew as it was happening. I don't think I mentioned that to you. So
no, that's pretty
cool. I'm glad
cool.
I got a chance. So I would love to bridge the gap in this long-standing divide that exists between bookkeepers and tax practitioners. I don't think it's a stretch to say that it does not serve anyone well.
No.
And we talked about my background starting as a bookkeeper and later becoming a CPA. So I know from personal experience what it feels like on both sides of that divide. I also know from personal experience that it can be addressed in a way that benefits both parties. And ultimately, and this was the point I was trying to make at Tax Twitter Retreat, the biggest winner is the small business clients that we're all trying to care for. So that's what it came out of. I've experienced how differently a bookkeeper gets treated at conferences by licensed tax pros. I don't know if differently is the perfect word for that. It's not a great experience,
Hmm.
to be honest. That's one of the reasons that I started Ask a CPA. It is a non-judgmental space for bookkeepers to ask a CPA things that they can't necessarily talk about with their client's tax pro for whatever reason, and there are a lot of reasons. By teaching them to prepare tax-ready books, this can actually go a long way toward addressing the pipeline crisis for tax preparers.
All right, you just mentioned pipeline, which is obviously a big issue. We've been hearing a lot about it. Actually, you just mentioned that this can help solve that. So this collaboration, better collaboration between bookkeepers and CPAs, how is that going to address or help a pipeline issue?
I think that if we could get this right, we'd not only make life easier for everyone involved, we'd actually help address this massive talent gap that's causing so much burnout and turnover, to go back to, some of the tenets that we addressed at the Bridging the Gap conference. I truly believe that shifting this mindset could be a huge part of the solution because it's just common sense that having bookkeepers and tax pros work throughout the year together, it just makes tax season take less work. And as you know, I know you don't do taxes anymore, but an hour during tax season is worth like 4 or 5 hours during the rest of the year, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, that disconnect between bookkeepers and tax pros and small business owners, it's not just an inconvenience, Randy. It's actively costing everyone time and money and sanity. And the more work that I do with bookkeepers and Ask a CPA, the clearer that it becomes to me that this isn't just a process issue, it's a people issue.
Huh.
It's a mindset issue. It's the classic, but this is the way it's always been done
Oh, yeah.
issue.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yep.
We need to teach the art of collaboration, not just its mechanics. We need to zoom out and we need to look at where each person fits into this larger, constantly rotating cycle. I want to change this. It can unquestionably be one of the angles that we can come at to address the pipeline crisis.
Well, yeah, I can see if we have collaboration, obviously that can make everything more efficient. So why do you think there's, CPAs that maybe have misconceptions about bookkeepers have misconceptions about CPAs? I guess were there some common ones and why do they exist? Why haven't we solved this earlier?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know why we haven't solved this earlier. As a matter of fact, when I started Ask a CPA, not only did bookkeepers start coming out of the woodwork and saying, oh my God, I've wanted this forever. I've wanted somebody to go to, right? Because the tax pros that their clients are working with, they're often condescending, they're often non responsive. And on the other side of things, tax pros will often get really frustrated, understandably, when during tax season they're given financial statements that make no sense whatsoever. But instead of doing something about it, and this
Right.
is what that tax Twitter retreat and also my Workflow Con presentation was all about, instead of doing something about it, they will complain that the bookkeepers don't know what they're doing and it's not their job to teach them, or I don't have time to teach them, right? It's time consuming. I get that. It takes energy. I get that. It also requires vulnerability.
Mhm.
And vulnerability as a strength, that's what I spoke on in Bridging the Gap last year. This is a huge area that I think we need to work on personally in our industry, probably in most industries. It is so much easier to just avoid this problem and stick with the way we've always done it. It is.
Mm-hmm.
And for bookkeepers, that means I'm just categorizing things the way the client says to. The tax preparer can deal with this,
Right.
right? Not taking ownership and not learning the subtleties of what it means to prepare books that are tax ready. And for tax pros, this means I'm going to have to do all sorts of cleanup because the bookkeepers don't know what they're doing, right? And believe me, at this point, I have heard, I promise, every imaginable scenario from both sides.
Yep.
And I promise you, this is avoidable. This is not an insurmountable problem. Tax pros who mentor and collaborate with and encourage bookkeepers, they are saving themselves a giant headache come tax season. They really are. There's a lot that you can take off of your shoulders, off of your plate, and give to the bookkeepers. Also, lifting them up, it increases the likelihood that they will excel and grow. When you put people down, you inhibit their growth. When you lift them up and encourage them, you give them the opportunity to blossom. But this is not how it's been done. It's always been, as a matter of fact, I have a friend who used to work at a firm that did both tax and bookkeeping, because all of the tenets that I'm talking about here, they're things that happen whether tax and bookkeeping are done in the same firm or two different firms, same situation. So these two departments didn't get along, and they were constantly complaining to each other in their own department about the idiots over there in the next department, right? Like they were both doing, the bookkeepers were complaining about the idiots over in the tax department, tax people complaining about the idiots over in the bookkeeping department. So the partners decided, this was their, you're going to love this was their approach, to move their desks into the same space so that they were all mixed up with each other. So they didn't do anything else. They didn't set expectations. They didn't create workflows. They didn't provide education. They didn't establish regular meetings or anything, right? They just moved their desks around so that they were intermingled, and that was going to like fix this problem, which turned out to mean that now they had to walk across the room to complain about each other with the people who were in their department, right? Like this solves nothing. My point is that without creating systems and expectations and shared resources, like the things that actually make collaboration possible, it doesn't matter where you're sitting. It doesn't matter whether you're in the same office. Everyone needs this. And the first step really is in understanding why you should even bother.
Thank you for joining us for part 1 of Randy Crabtree's conversation about community in the profession with Nancy McClelland, the dancing accountant. Part 2 will air April 1st. Be sure to subscribe and go to theuniquecpa.com so you don't miss it or any of our other episodes. And we'll see you next time on The Unique CPA. ProfessionalProductions.net